All right, time for rave physics for breakfast, or something like that. Base 3. And remember that whenever you're thinking about a base, that the two themes of orientation and position, this is something that is really essential. It's really the only way that you can understand a base as it is deconstructed, that is separate from the synthesis, that is in fact not something that we can deconstruct. I mean, it's one thing to be able to define aspects of the components of a greater whole, but that's all you're doing. There is a transcendent relationship that all of these bases have with each other that leads to another level of understanding. Here we're looking obviously at them in a very special way. That is, we're trying to deconstruct them, we're trying to see them as unique contributors to the way in which the programming of the totality operates, and specifically the way in which our programming operates, that is, the life programming here on the planet. The objective, and it's here, and obviously we're dealing with something that is one of the deep embodiments of what we might call form principle. We're dealing with the theme of being itself, and when we look at these various dimensions, because in fact evolution, design, movement, being, personality, within the context of juxtaposition theory, these are dimensions in that sense. And we can understand them dimensionally simply in the sense that each of these bases, their filtering is a dimensional quality of what ultimately is synthesized into the 5-dimensional form principle that, is the basis upon which the 4-dimensional field of light, the Einstein relativity, what it sits on, so that we end up with our 9-dimensional phenomena. Here, looking at being, we're looking at, we're looking at this one-dimensional view, and a one-dimensional view that is at the very core of the goal of the program. And the goal of the program is to bring forms into existence that house the potential, or can house the potential for cognitive manifestation at various levels. Obviously there are many, many levels in which cognition operates. Some of them are extremely, extremely simple when we think about the vast chain and diversity of life. However, one of the things that we're looking at here, and the way in which the keynoting is wrapped around this particular illustration, and again, this is, the key to that is that this is in humanity. There is this illustration that has nothing to do with humanity. This is in particular in relationship to the way in which we will look at, or can look at, the impact of base filtering on human life. So obviously being is something that is, one of the essential ingredients. It's interesting about the nature of being, because again, we are always interested in position. We're dealing with a base after all. And that means that, in terms of the position of the base, there is always something that's out of the picture. And do you ever notice this? It's too bad Andrea isn't here. I know she's in therapy this morning. She was quite upset about that, but she'll pick it up later. It's one of the great mysteries and one of the most interesting things in genetics. That is that, you have basically 5 basic components. And yet those 5 basic components always only appear as 4s. And whether that is in the DNA or in the RNA, because you actually have a switch of one of the components. But the fact is that despite the fact that there are 5 of them, you only get 4. Now look at this illustration. Now think about what we've been looking at and understand the principle as it exists, because the underlying genetic principle, I am genetics, the underlying genetic principle is all rooted in the way in this filtering system operates. And when you look at the positioning of being, what you see is that there's always, and it doesn't matter whether it's being, wherever you go, wherever you put your imprint, there is a corner that is going to be out. And again, this is obviously dealing with the 4 sides. What you end up with, though, is that you do end up with a 4, after all. You end up with all of these rotating 4s as we move around in any kind of combination. In other words, the 5 is always being left out, has to be integrated in a different way. In this illustration, the themes of integration move with the arrows. And you can see that. So that this is the way ultimately as this principle turns, as somebody is coming out of evolution and this is cut off and so forth and so on as it goes around, ultimately all of it is end up in the world. But it's very important to understand that basically through positioning we always end up with a 4. Always. It's a way of understanding the very basic design of genetics. In other words, the way in which transference takes place in genetics, that is the ability to be able to move from the DNA to the RNA and vice versa, and the fact that what you're dealing with is that in each case you have the illusion of a 5 that only functions as a 4. So here you can begin to see the beginnings of all this. And when you're looking at it, the interesting thing about the nature of the position is its relationship to 2 things, to mind and individuality. These are the dynamic threads that connect to being as a source. In other words, that one of the things to understand about the nature of being is that fundamental to being as a construct is that it is only for the emergence of individual mind. This is the program. The program of the emergence of individual mind. And of course, because every corner becomes a 4, the 4 different dimensional connections, that what we end up with always is this, this I think, this presence. And of course, this is one of the main constructs that's rooted in giving authority to the body. In human design, we give authority to the body, and giving authority to the body, what we do is that we release the potential of the individual mind. We also get the individual body and its potential. This over here, this line over here, it could be a line that you could call PHS. And this line over here is a line that you can call rave psychology. Because that's exactly what it is. It's one of the, this is the bedrock of being knowledge. That the knowledge of being, that the knowledge of genetics is going to move 2 ways. One is into the establishment of the way in which mind itself is going to operate. That is, the potential of self-reflected consciousness, the building here of what we might call the neocortex. And in the building of that neocortex, all of that to be able to release mind, and at the same time recognizing that the construct of mind, or the perfection of mind, that is brain, is not possible without the individuation or the uniqueness of body. I've mentioned to you that I was thinking last night, actually, I was trying to remember actually drawing this illustration. Because I did the drawings in sometime in the end of 1988. I don't know when, but sometime in the fall of 1988. And I have a really quite remarkable memory, and it's one of the things I can't remember drawing. And it just gave me a funny feeling yesterday. I actually couldn't remember doing the drawing. It's something that was deeply imprinted in me. On the surface, my work is to distill things to the simple. But there is so much information that is here. And so much information that is at the bedrock of literally everything that we work with in our world. I mean, all the fundamental formulas of the way things are intended to operate. The formula before diversity, that is, the bedrock formulas, they're all here. And so when we come to something as extraordinary as being, and to understand that this is, a dimensional aspect, that basically what this is that this is the concretization of matter, and the concretization of matter through a living program. A living program. What we call genetics. I'm a great admirer of Dr. Francis Crick, the late Dr. Francis Crick. What an absolutely extraordinary mind. And I'm sure you know the founder of, or the discoverer of one of the discoverers, along with Watson, of the Human Genetic Code. You see, we are nothing but genetics. I know that there's all kinds of philosophers and people who would like to say that, we are more than what makes us. And, that's all very sweet. But it's a lot of crap. Because in the end there's no escaping it. There literally is no escaping it. We are dominated in the deepest possible way by our genetic imperatives and determinations. It is obvious from the moment you enter into human design and you understand what the not-self is. You begin to understand the power of genes to control the way in which we operate. When you begin to see the genetic formulas, as I do in my quarter-by-quarter program, the way in which these genetic formulas are in fact the basis of every single action and thought that we have, that they're the basis of all of the drama that is there. It is not a lowering of the magic to accept and surrender to the fact that we are a programmed and programmable bioform. It's what is there in the genes. And the most extraordinary thing about the genes is that the way in which we are designed to come together in this illusion, and again, that is something that cannot be separated from movement and evolution, but nonetheless, the way we come together in this separation is that we have built into us a genetic predisposition to see ourselves as alone. I am. The mystical I am. Perhaps the deepest and most profoundest place in which, if you go to the great masters of the East, because they're the only ones who truly pursued it, their goal was always to reach just I am. Funny thing, no? When you think about it? Because you see, the reaching of I am, in the spiritual sense, the way in which it's been constructed over millennia in the East, would be the denial of all this. I mean, what they're seeking is this, you know? What they're seeking is this magical root of I am. But the wise ones realize that, I am can never stand alone. I mean, this is the nature of the world. It can't stand alone. It can never stand alone. But this is what they look for. You know, here is the source of it, and it is written in the genes. I mean, after all, as an organism, we have mutated to a point in which our collective genetic information, I mean, you have to understand, every single cell is carrying the code. Every single cell is operating according to some imprint relative to its place in that whole chain of the code of what it is to bring out a body. It's incredible. And everything is in there. I mean, everything that is necessary in order to establish uniqueness. Everything that's necessary in order to establish mind. It's all there. It's all rooted in the being. And it's all rooted in the genetics. See, I realize that for the program, that mind in and of itself serves no purpose. Please understand that. That mind in and of itself, that is the fulfillment of the possibility of the personality to experience self-reflected consciousness. What concerns the program is that it can, not what it does. That it can experience self-reflected consciousness, not what that self-reflected consciousness is. And for us, so far away from the being, locked out on the other side, that ego over there, the search for self, the part of the grander illusion that disconnects us from surrender. See, I began by saying you can't deconstruct all this. Because if you could really just, erase that design up there, you would have these surrendered I ams, I guess. It's the vehicle. And the program is interested in being able to create the environment for a type of cognitive expression. But it doesn't care about what the expression is. I mean, that's the great joke. It doesn't. If it cared, we would not, and again, I say cared, I'm anthropomorphizing that, don't take that literally. If the program cared, we would not have a homogenized world. We would not have homogenized consciousness. That the program long ago would have moved us towards realization. It does not. The program has nothing invested in what the result of the self-reflected consciousness is. It's the tragedy of our plane. It's interested in simply being able to create the mechanism. And you see here, in a way, we're sort of looking at robot world. I don't mean to denigrate it, but the moment you take away the design, the moment you take away the dimension of design, I'm not talking about human design, The moment you take away the ego, you don't have the pillars of our illusion. You have elegant zombies, but nothing else. That's why this cannot be deconstructed. But it's essential for you to see, in terms of the way in which the program operates, that the very vehicle itself, that the responsibility inherent in filtering the neutrino stream through this base is to bring the form and its perfection into the world. To bring this unique genetics that can spawn a unique self-reflected mind. But it's only interested in the mechanics. Remember, we're dealing with the form principle here. We are not dealing with relativity. We are dealing with a 5-dimensional form principle, about the construct, about how everything is built. Even the dimension of design in that sense is part of the form principle. It just has different priorities. But again, when we looked at evolution, we saw the relationship of mind, that it could only exist, in a four that brought out that ego. The way in which we understand ultimately the way mind is projected on this plane. Positions and orientation. When you think about base, this is the only way that you can think about it. You have to see it in its relationships in order to understand, in a sense, the way in which the program works, so that you can, in looking at the deconstruction, you can begin to speculate mechanically on certain aspects and the way in which they work. The way in which they work. Because not only is every single aspect automatically a 4, but every aspect is also automatically just a 3. And again, this is one of the bedrocks of, like the hexagram, building things on 3s. And understanding the difference between the 3 and what happens when it becomes a 4, that every one of these steps is it is a mechanical revelation. My pauses are for coughs that you don't need to hear. Okay. The body. It is, one of the more fascinating areas of this study is beginning to relate the bases to their components. And of course, in this case, we're dealing with the atomics, the atomic principle. Everything that we understand about the nature of matter is based on atomics. That is, it is the atom that is the basic physical construct of the totality. It was, if you look out in the sky, everything that you see, every star that you see, all of it is atomic in nature. And so you're looking at the basic material principle of the totality. In looking at that the first thing is to grasp that being is matter. There are many, many people that would argue with that, by the way. Being is matter. But again, we have to understand something, that we are looking at the way things are constructed in a filtering spectrum. the objective base, it is a filter that concretizes form. I mean, it concretizes form. And, being is matter. That is, think about the Old Testament, not just the Old Testament. There are many, many ancient cultures spread out across the planet who in their origin myths speak of the legend of humanity being formed from, in many cases, clay, as an example. And that the breath of the god or gods or goddesses or whatever the hell it was, that breath into the clay brought it life. In the deepest sense of looking back historically at I don't mean historically, I mean in the sense of looking at the history of life itself on the planet, so going back literally billions of years, it is clear that life emerged out of matter. I mean, this is what it's all about. And so it is something to grasp. When I talk about the body as the life, it is something I understand at such a deep level, in the sense that it really is it. I mean, it's it. It doesn't matter whether one of the byproducts of the body happens to be the consciousness that I use to communicate with you. I mean, it's an interesting byproduct, isn't it? And I guess that as forms that are endowed with a cognitive potential, it gives us something to do while we're waiting to die, so the next generation can be born with the next equipment. It is... it's the way the movie goes, but it is the form. It's all about the form. There's nothing I can do about my bronchioles that have been handling smoke for nearly 50 years. It's the form. And the form provides us all with limitations. And we either accept those limitations or we suffer, one or the other. It's all form principle. The child that has its breathing cut off as it's coming out of the womb, and oxygen is deprived from the brain. The matter is going to be the story. It's going to be the story because there is going to be dysfunction in the matter, and if there's dysfunction in the matter, the life is lost. I mean, the life itself is lost. Everything for us is about these forms. Everything. We have yet to truly treat these temples as they deserve. They are incredible things. I mean, one of the most profoundest acts of human design is, taking away from the mind responsibility for operating the life. And, you can see here that this is the beginning of the perfection of a being, is when their form is what matters. Everything else will work if the form is operating correctly. And so being itself, in other words, if we look at the objective base, whenever we look at that base, to see it deconstructed is to understand something. Here is the source of life. Quite a thing to say. It's the source of life. It is the source of form coming alive. Oh, that's really something, eh? The alive form principle. What we see in the end is the purest agency of this. Genetics. This is what gives the form principle its capacity, its extraordinary capacity to transcend the inanimate and to experience what it is to be animated, and the potential of self-reflected consciousness that goes with it. And being is matter, and matter just is. Isness. It's like itness. These are things that are so powerful to grasp. It is what it's all about. It is what it's all about. There is nothing else. We are matter forms on a matter planet, in a matter solar system, in a matter galaxy, in a matter biverse. And we are controlled and dominated by the forces of the form principle. It's all matter. Oh yes, there's the other side. There always is. There's always energy. And of course, in the holistic, we know that it all comes together so beautifully expressed in the yin-yang. It all comes together in a dance of polarities. And out of that arises a quantum principle of existence. But in and of itself, all alone, here is the source of life. And the evidence of life is the presence of matter. Just the matter. And then there's a movement. And you can see where this movement is going. This movement is going towards matter interacting with matter. And matter interacting with matter, what ultimately we will call sex, is the genes. This is the home of genetics. And everything about the genes is their imperative to survive, to make more, and to constantly protect against dysfunction. Everything about the genes is that they control humanity through its sex drive. This is how genetics has its greatest power. And it's not just, the obvious about the impact on an individual, their openness, their attractiveness to what they are not, and so forth and so on. All the basic things you understand about conditioning and the genetic imperative. But to really understand something about what the objective is all about. Evolution would like to get you to the light, so to speak, But being is only interested in survival. 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 Do you notice that survival takes place in an environment of light, where art and freedom are intended? It's a nice kind of thing to see. All the steps have relation to them. Creation is memory. It just is. And it is progress, but it is an illusion. See, when I wrote these, I did not write them, as you can tell, as a scientist. I did not write them in the way in which I have been teaching for the last 15 years or so, whatever it is. No, they were not written. They emerged one day, and they emerged sort of poetically like this. The deepest way to really grasp these progressions is to investigate them in just many different ways. They're actually quite something. But anyway, let's get back to our being. This is all about survival. Survival. Isn't it interesting is if you smash an atom, you can kill everything. It's funny, no? The atomic bomb. If you shatter the atom, you release this extraordinary energy. The form principle, the objective, is not simply to create a body that is, the infrastructure of the genetic body, but a genetic body that has to survive, because no single life is the answer for the program. It is the great swath of humanity operating over time, generation after generation, millennium after millennium after millennium, all along the hominid tree. It's all about survival, because survival permits mutation. It permits mutation. Movement. Movement changes everything. This incredible transformation that takes place through movement. See, most people think of evolution as a science and not as a dimension. As a matter of fact, there are all kinds of religious sects that are vehemently opposed to evolutionary theories of any kind. There are many intelligent people. It's why I don't trust intelligence. There are many intelligent people who actually believe that the world began some 5,000 years ago, according to the Bible, and that God put dinosaurs' bones in the grounds to test us. These are intelligent people. They're not idiots. Intelligent people. It's a remarkable sign of what homogenization does to consciousness. But anyway, evolution is a dimension in the sense that everything about the way in which the construct operates is that it's designed to go through endless changes. Endless changes. Not at its core. A base is a base is a base. A crystal is a crystal. Billions of years, unchanged in a sense, and only in a sense. But it is the illusion that is being created, that is an illusion that is guaranteed not to be static. This is what the inanimate is, This is stasis. This is nothing's happening. There is simply the slow deterioration of weathering, but nothing is happening. Everything about the program is that the program is based on the turning of the wheel. The program, in essence, is based on life and death and rebirth. And each rebirth carries a new possibility, unknown, unseen before. This is the genetic miracle of coupling. Two beings come together, and out of this comes an extraordinarily unique combination. And they can have 30 children, and each one of them will carry a unique mix of genetic material and information. This is the way the program is designed. The body, as beautiful as it is designed to decay. It's not designed to be immortal. This fantasy of keeping us alive longer and longer and healthier, to a point. You see, from the point of view of the genes, that 7 years after the birth of your last child, you are redundant. You are redundant. It's something to think about. You see, from the genetic point of view, once a vehicle has stopped being creative in the sense of being reproductive, And once there is a 7-year cellular cycle necessary for the minimum guarantee of nurturing of the next generation, the body no longer, that vehicle, that being, they have served their purpose. From this perspective, remember, I'm deconstructing. From this objective position, this is what it's about. Sex is not pleasure. It's survival. Survival. It's the way it works. And this is our atomic world. And everything is atomic in nature. The only other thing that has mass that isn't atomic is the neutrino. The only thing. Here we're dealing with everything that we understand about the possibility of things, when you get all this stuff, the Hubble telescope, and by the way, very sad news that it's broken and they're not going to fix it, which is, almost criminal science, but anyway, all these incredible images of, fantastic star clusters and galaxies and quasars and rings around black holes and all of this stuff, atomic. The vast form principle, and it's all life. Well, it's all being. The whole thing. I don't have problems with scale. I don't look at the night sky and think, wow, how vast. I really don't. I think it's pretty. But I don't think of it in terms of, it's vast and I'm tiny. I don't. It doesn't work that way for me. It's all relative. Everything's relative. When I think about the matter principle, the form principle, when I think about that the presence of form is the presence of the potential of being, then it's clear to me, in terms of my relationship to what the voice told me about the biverse being a living thing that had not or has not yet emerged into the world that it will, whatever, I don't know, the world it belongs to, however one can express that. Mystically, the 25th gate in the G Center, this, vessel of love, universal love. It's the only gate of the inanimate. The whole totality is a being. That's what this says. It says the totality that we understand as what science calls universe, what I call biverse, that this is a being. It's a being. It's a being with an imperative, an imperative to survive. It is a being that is atomic in nature. It is a vast, vast, vast thing. When I look at the sky, I have this sense that I'm like some bad science fiction movie from the 60s, that I'm some kind of traveler inside of a body. Because that's what it is. It is a vast womb. Even the scientists find it spooky that there seems to be a kind of wall in places at the far extremities of what they observe. That the Hopi Indians in their mythology believe that they know in the sky where the umbilical cord is to the mother. And at its most mystical, this base expresses the universality of being. And it's not about we are not alone, the UFO alien people. It's not about that. It's about understanding that we are one with this being. It is us, and we are it. There is a deep, deep magic here. A deep magic. It expresses the very nature of the potential of all of this, that it is a life, that the consciousness program is, the form principle moving towards the capacity of endowing the whole biverse with the consciousness. This is what is there to understand about the vast evolutionary process. I was told that it's going to take another 2 billion years. That's a long time. Even though, we've been at it 15 billion, another 2 billion years, until we get to that place where, this form principle has reached its perfection. Right now we struggle in that sense from the perspective of the form principle to endow simple forms. I'm speaking of us, so we're not simple, with the possibility of self-reflected consciousness, which has been remarkably achieved. But yet, we are not in any way able to be, at this point, the quantum that is the consciousness of the whole. There is a long way to go before the form principle is able to build the infrastructure necessary for that, to build the greater brain, because that's what it is. According to the voice, we are all in what is in fact the greater Ajna center. This is it is a vast construct. It's a vast construct. And we are all in so many ways deeply, deeply connected to this world of this filtering, this being, the atomic world. How important all of this is to us. It is a foundation in that sense of the quality of existence. It's never that one aspect is superior to the other, because I can go on about the beauty and how incredible each of these corners are. They are, indeed. But for me, the objective base is a base that establishes and maintains necessary humility. Humility about the nature of being. And acceptance. It is clear to me that we are truly choiceless. Truly choiceless. At a level that is exceedingly difficult to grasp fully, to let go of entirely. It is all a construct. All a construct. It's not determined. That is its magic. It's not. It is an evolving construct because one of its dimensions is just that. But it is a construct that is always based on a stable formula. Genetics. It is so incredible, this formula. This way to organize form. The way to build forms that build themselves. Isn't reproduction amazing? Isn't it amazing? We take such things for granted. What an incredible thing. When it started a couple of billion years ago, cells dividing, reproduction, making more. And the magic of that, this magic of what happens when you take this simple formula and you move it in time and space. Wow. See, everyone looks at the nature of the construct now and says, wow, God must have been really smart. You know what I mean? Figure all this out, all this stuff. Create all of this. It's just a simple formula. It really is. It's a simple construct, and if you saw it billions of years ago, you would have seen how simple it really was. How basic. But time, movement, and the dimension of evolution. You know, this constant drive towards the diversity of the formula. This is the magic, is the diversity. This is the beauty that you see in this incredible positioning. Here is where diversity lives. I mean, it's extraordinary. You know, so it's not a genetic, I clone. All these unique I ams, defining their place relative to something else. And on and on and on. This vast diversity that has taken us from, 4-foot tall hominids 4 million years ago to the doorstep of the emergence of the final chain. Incredible process. Incredible speed in cosmological time. Unbelievable. The power of this force at work. It took a long time to get it going. It does. Think about humans. We have, because there is a cognitive goal, we need to be able to have a brain that is able to do functions at speeds that are close to the speed of light. In order to be able to do that, there are certain radioactive elements that are necessary in order for the brain to be able to operate in that way. Those elements were not elements that naturally existed. If it weren't for the death of stars, hundreds of millions and billions of years ago, without their death, we never would have been seeded with these elements. We never could have had the functions we have. It took the lifetime of stars, generation after generation of star lives that last billions of years, in order to get to the point that there was enough high energy juice for our brain system. It couldn't have been done quickly. And once it was there, once it was in place, once we had neural firings that were so fast that the self-reflected consciousness actually thought it was in control, we have the deepest emergence of illusion you can imagine. Amazing accomplishment. But time, so much time. And once it's there, the explosion. And you see what happens with that explosion. The first thing that happened was that the survival mechanism inherent in this position brought humanity to the top of the food chain. And at the moment that humanity climbed to the top of the food chain, humanity as a form was out of control and beginning to die. And the way it expressed that, of course, was by overpopulating. We know that any species that totally can dominate its environment and is no longer concerned with predators will keep on producing until they reach a point of crashing. It is just the law of the game. And humanity, as we well know, has already done that. I mean, we have already reproduced far beyond our ability to be able to nurture and care and take care of those that we bring into the world. That our very survival mechanism that has brought us this vast dominance, it's also an indication that we've reached the end of that long journey, at least our perspective of it, our share in the movement of it. The wheel will turn away from us as it is turned away from others. There's so much magic in understanding the position and the nature of these bases as a way to see the depth of the program, to understand the way in which it was constructed. Because, of course, when you go to the surface, we're like miners deep down in a mine. You stay down there too long, it's hard to see on the surface. Then, we always need to come back to the surface. And when we come back to the surface, we see this magnificent movement from the root formula, from the base formula. We see this incredible movement into the diversity of all of the possibilities that are here, seeing them expressed on this physical plane. Well, next time you look out at the night sky, think about being inside of something. Don't think of it as being outside. Because this is where we are. We're deep inside, deep in the form principle, one of its prizes along the way. And despite the fact that it has no direct interest in what the byproduct is of our consciousness, we are privileged to share it and to enjoy the potential of seeing things, the way they were designed in the first place. Well, that's it for today. I'm happy that you were all here and got to share my morning coffee with you. Because there's a lot of folks in this class who never make it, so I'm always pleased you can. I know some of you have ungodly hours that you have to tune into this. So nice that you're here. Go have a sleep if you're late at night, and for those of you in the morning, well, enjoy your day. Anyway, take care. Bye for now.